Good morning. Welcome into Let's Bet It here on Pickswise, Pickswise.com, and our Pickswise YouTube channel. It is Let's Bet It. I am Mark Zinno, joined by Jared Smith, new resident of Las Vegas. Jared Smith, welcome in. Good to talk to you this morning. Jared, here in just a moment. We'll get started, but reminder to subscribe to our Pickswise YouTube channel. Let us know in the comments what your picks are, what questions you have. We'll try to get to them all. And, of course, make sure you download the Pickswise app, available on Apple Store and Google Play. Jared, I know Vegas life is treating you well. It's nice and early out there. Sun might just be breaking over the wonderful flat horizon in the desert, but it's great to be with you, man. It's good to actually, there's a different Jared now. He's Vegas Jared, and Vegas Jared has a clean slate. He's got a clean record.
Vegas Jared, as long as it's not Vegas Dave, right? Vegas right. Jared is a lot more relaxed, other than the move. So the move is kind of behind us now. Like the stresses of moving are over. I'm kind of settled in. And I'll be honest, the biggest adjustment so far has been the books that I bet with and the options that I have. Luckily, I still have the option to go drive to Arizona 30 minutes and go put bets in on DraftKings and FanDuel, which I've done many times, and I think that's something I will continue to do. But yeah, it's a different vibe out here, a little more relaxed. Maybe I'll get a little pina colada on the show. Probably not, virgin only.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Your same game parlays are out the window in Vegas, right?
Oh yeah, no, all those are done. And, we will still talk about them on the show. And I never want to be doing less than we're doing, in other states. I think they're still worthy to talk about, but I can't bet them. And I will always tell you, I can't bet this, but I think it's something that's interesting because I think my opinion matters less when I don't actually have skin in the game. So I always will disclose that to you guys when I don't have access.
Jared, who are you kidding? Your opinion matters all the time. You can't fool us. We've been around you. We know. Got a jam-packed show for you guys coming up today. Better up, of course, we'll get to Major League Baseball, some NFL preseason picks as we have more football going on tonight. And then Dave Ross of VSiN will give us an NFC East preview, and, of course, we'll close it out with our plays of the day. So let's get right to it, Jared, and get into Better Up and start with, is the trend your friend? Because once we get into the baseball stuff, you and I are going a little crazy today here in the parlay department. Well, you're not so much you, but me. But we'll get to that in a moment. All right, trend your friend. Texas Rangers 1-9 on the money line in their last 10 versus Seattle. Is the trend your friend?
I love that you have trends, by the way. So Kirby Spores today. Some dude named Josh Spores, who I didn't even have any numbers on him on my first inning sheet because he's making his first start this year. So. Yeah. When I look at Kirby on the road, I'm a little bit concerned there, but he's got good numbers against Seattle or against Texas in his limited sample size this year. So yes, I will friend that trend. Mariners money line, they're making their push for the postseason. We've got a little action on them to win the American League. I'm in. Friend it.
If you're skittish, I would just remind everybody, Texas is one of the better run line teams in baseball this year. So if there's a better value price-wise on what you're getting on the run line.
Plus 120 on the plus 1.5 for the Rangers at home. That's not bad. I mean, that's not bad.
So just another way to play it if you're skittish on Seattle with Kirby, especially on the road. All right, San Francisco Giants. And this one, when I saw this trend, it made me smile a little bit because of what we're going to talk about coming up in NRFIs and YRFIs. But Giants 2-8 on the run line in the last 10 home games against the lowly Pittsburgh Pirates.
Wow. Well, 10 games. They only play him 3 times in San Francisco. So that means this dates back to 3-4 years ago. Bryce Wilson has really not faced many batters on the Giants, just 6 plate appearances in his career. Rodon surprisingly only has 19 plate appearances against the Pirates. I guess that makes sense if you consider he pitched in the American League for most of his career. Yep. But he's got a high K percentage, and the Pirates against lefties has been they've been awful against lefties this year.
Yeah, that's not a bad K prop to look at now that you mention it.
Yeah, I looked at it this morning because his strikeout prop, Rodon's been one of those guys that's really volatile, so he's got a chance to put up a 10 or 11, and there's been a few double-digit lefties that have gone for Ks against the Pirates of late. Again, the lefty against Pittsburgh has been a trend. So tough, man. The Giants need these games. They're desperate. They're probably going to miss the playoffs anyway, so I will unfriend this trend. I think the Giants are the play tonight.
By the way, if the Giants are going to miss the playoffs, can they at least get to 85 wins in doing so? That would help me out greatly. Thank you.
That would be good because I have under 85.5. So 85 is
okay.
the max
Well, that would be perfect. I took over 84.5. So we're right. We were exactly middle of that.
I got plus 20 on the under.
It's
so
funny.
I feel good about it.
It's like, I went back and I was like, let me just double check everything I bet in the beginning of the year. Because I've been so laser focused on other things and seeing where the Giants are. I'm like, they're going to win like 30 games in the next 7 weeks. They got to basically play, 600 baseball the rest of the way out, which is not likely to happen the way they've played this year. So it's better than my White Sox over 91.5 wins, by the way. It's neither here nor there. Speaking of Sox, let's go to the red variety. Yankees and Red Sox are 5-0 to the over in the last 5 when Boston is an underdog. Now, I'll just say this much. Given the 2 starters going tonight, this feels like an over.
It does. It does. Of all these numbers are good this year, but they're bad against the Yankees. Herman has looked really shaky. Now, granted, he did go, I think, like 7 innings, 1 run against the Cardinals in his last start, but that was a weird game. That was 1-0.
Yeah.
And it was a game where Jordan Montgomery was pitching against his former team for the first time after getting traded a few days prior. That was a very strange game in a National League ballpark. This is at Fenway where Herman has struggled, and this is an over game.
Herman hasn't.
I'm not betting under in this game. No way.
No, you're not. It's either an over or pass. Herman hasn't gotten past the 5th inning in any start this year. Granted, again, he started the year on the IL, so he's only made, I think, 4 starts to this point, or 5 starts, whatever it is. But he hasn't gotten out of the 5th inning. So you're going to get in the Yankees bullpen, which has been a weakness for this team as of late, given all the injuries that they've suffered. So even if Herman is okay, still the back end here might be the issue for keeping this thing under. All right, finally, Cardinals 8-2 on the run line in their last 10 home games, and they are taking on Milwaukee, which is, of course, something for the good land, as it's a battle for first place in the NL Central.
Montgomery Lauer. Montgomery making his 2nd start with St. Louis after getting traded from the Yankees. We just talked about him in that game against Herman last week. Lauer's stuff is good. And he has good numbers against St. Louis. And this is a massive series. So if you're telling me, I'm assuming, let me look at the line. I'm assuming St. Louis is favored because they're at home. They are. So that means you're getting plus 1.5 on the Brewers would be minus 150. Listen, everything I've researched this year about underdogs on the run line have been profitable. And you're telling me that the Brewers are a team that has been a bit of a fade lately, but they kind of perked back up over the week. Over the last few days this week against Tampa. So I think the Brewers are the play here. I don't trust Jordan Montgomery as far as I can throw him. I know we've talked about him. So I would take the Brewers run line here and fade that trend.
All right, let's pivot here to our picks, Nerfies and Yerfies and everything else here. Nerfie goes 6-2 yesterday, up 37.5 units since July 1st. So the Nerfie has been hot. And Jared, you know me, I'm the Nerfie king. I will bet the Nerfie all day long. Across Major League Baseball. But I put together something special today that I haven't done at all this year. These are 3 games that I don't necessarily love, but I like enough with the value to put them in a parlay if you so choose. Let's go with the Phillies and the Mets at minus 142, Atlanta and Miami minus 142, and Pittsburgh, San Francisco at minus 130. Now, the thing to me about these 3 that's interesting is that on half of the ledger, I have a lockdown Nerfy guy that I'm really confident in. For the Mets, it's Scherzer. For the Marlins, it's Lopez. And for San Francisco, it's Rodon. It's on the other side of the ledger that I'm a little bit shaky on these things. Philadelphia starts Ranger Suarez. The Braves start Jake Odorizzi. And Pittsburgh starts Bryce Wilson. Bryce Wilson is really the puke factor here. And it's the last one. And I know that if the first 2 hit, and I'm sitting there waiting till 10 o'clock at night for Bryce Wilson to blow this for me, it's going to be complete misery. Like,
and it's the bottom of the first inning too. It would literally be the last half inning.
Part of me is like, I hope that Ranger Suarez gives up or Scherzer gives up a blast in the first win. So I lost a Nerfie on KC and who was it earlier in the week? It was KC or Texas. I think it was on a throwing error, and then it was just awful. I
lost a Nerfie last night. There was 2 outs in the bottom of the first, base is empty, and Xander Bogaerts hits a routine fly ball to left because it's a green monster in left field. It goes off the monster and it's not caught. and then Alex Verdugo, the next batter, doubles. 2 outs, bases empty, bottom 1. I lost the NRFI last night.
Yeah,
Plus
so
21 too, no less. So
but
listen, these
like,
bets are random. That's why I'm fine with parlaying them, because I think they are random enough to where it's really hard to really quantify edge. We're trying to very hard, but at the end of the day, these are very random bets, and they happen in bunches. We see what the NRFI records are, so totally on board with you parlay.
All 3 of these together in a parlay plays at plus 413. So let's roll the dice. Little pizza bet. Little pizza bet on the
It's not the best bet you'll ever make in your life, but that's a good Friday night little sprinkle. We'll go a little Friday night sprinkle for you.
Let me give you one more play here, and we'll turn it over to you for your walk this way parlay here. LA Dodgers, first 5 on the run line, -0.5. Little juicy at -154, but some guy named Tony Gonsolin is starting for the Dodgers, and last time I checked, he's good. 13-1, 2.3 ERA, .89 whip against one of the softest hitting teams in baseball in Kansas City. I know KC's at home. Dodgers are on the road here, and there could be a viability that they'll sleep through this thing, but this is just almost on the tee, too easy for me to hit. And sometimes when it seems too easy, it is. But nonetheless, I'll back that Gonsolin's going to have the normal start that he is against the Royals. And plus, the Royals are starting Daniel Lynch, who is just a dumpster fire on the mound. So that's enough for me here to lay this juice and swallow it, given the starter. If it was Zach Greinke at home, it'd be a different conversation. But it's not. So let's lay the 154 here on the half run in the first 5 between the Dodgers and the Royals.
Yeah, I like it. Gonsolin's never faced the Royals either, so that's a tough first look for a guy that's that good. All right, walk this way parlay. Listen, this one I didn't struggle with this today, but this is the juiciest one I've ever played. Like juice on the other end, like it's juicy on the how many, laying $2 on most of these. The parlay itself is only plus 197. But that being said, when you parlay 3 plus EV bets together, it's a plus EV bet. I don't really care if it's juicy or not, or if it's 4-1 or 3-1 or what you would consider a normal parlay. So here we go. Patrick, this is the one I really like the most. Patrick Sandoval over 1.5 against the Twins. This dude has an 89% hit rate on this prop this year. 16 of 18 starts have been over 1.5 walks. 11 straight starts of over 1.5. If we widen the sample size to last season, it's still an 80% hit rate, 28 out of 35. That's the equivalent of minus 400 odds. Well, we're laying minus 195 for this bet. That's a pretty big cushion there. Meanwhile, Minnesota's a slightly above average walk rate team against lefties this year. 16 of the last 25 lefty starters have gone over 1.5 against the Twins. But I think this is more of a bet on Sandoval than it is on the Twins lineup being patient. Then I've got a couple of hooks for you. George Kirby over 0.5, minus 265 at the Rangers. I know that sounds juicy, but 73% hit rate this year, 11 out of 15 starts. That's the equivalent of minus 275 odds. So not a huge cushion there, but still a cushion nonetheless. Meanwhile, 21 of the last 25 righty starters have walked at least one batter against the Rangers this season. That is an 84% hit rate. That is the equivalent to over minus 500 odds. And again, laying minus 265 isn't ideal, but it still is a cushion compared to what the probability is of this bet hitting, at least compared to what the Orioles lineup has been doing. Finally, Corey Kluber over a hook, minus 235, facing the Orioles today. This one is simple. He's walked at least one batter in all 5 starts against Baltimore this season. So I don't see why he can't walk one tonight against an Orioles team that is fighting for the playoffs.
Crazy. He's faced the Orioles 5 times already. That's like insane against one opponent in a year.
But that's what it is. I'm just telling you the numbers.
Well, listen,
5 starts, he's walked at least one each time. So that's the parlay, plus 197. And I did bet all these individually. I put a unit on each. And again, I know they're juicy, but don't look at value as this plus money thing. Look at value as the probability of a bet hitting compared to the probability that the odds are telling you. And if there's a gap there, there is value. And it doesn't matter if it's plus or minus. So again, that's what I'm trying to beat into your guys' heads. Hopefully one day you'll listen to me, but hopefully it's today.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's not a play here. And, while you were in the process of moving, I actually put together I took a walk prop on James Tyone, which hit.
Wow.
Because he is a walk machine as of late. So next time he comes up in the Yankees rotation, I need you to put that in your walk this way parlay. And at 1.5, it was over 1.5, and he's walked at least 3 in his last 4 consecutive starts. So make a note of that when Tyone comes back up here in the Yanks rotation. I don't do the walk prop thing often, so I wanted to let you know that
I love it,
dabbled
man.
in
Listen, they're good bets, and they're easier to quantify because there's less numbers, so there's less gray area.
Absolutely.
Only need 2 to win, or 1 in this case for a couple of these guys today.
All right, that does it for our plays for Major League Baseball in our Better Up segment. Now let's turn our attention to the NFL and welcome in from VSiN for our NFC East preview. Dave Ross joins us here on Let's Bet It on Pickswise at Pickswise.com and the Pickswise YouTube channel. Dave, good morning and welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Mark. Great to see you guys. And yeah, it was wild watching football last night. I don't call it real football yet. It's still fake football to me. But at least we get a taste of it as we get closer and closer to the real stuff in September.
Yeah, again, the Ravens knew their insane preseason winning streak, and they win another one last night, at least consecutive, money line wins. Are you even betting the preseason at this point?
I'm not, and I'm glad I didn't because I was going to fade the Ravens last night. You had to figure it wasn't one of those, percentage chances plays that the next one after 20-0 ATS, I think they're 18-2 now, 19-2 ATS, 21-0 on the money line here. You thought, well, that's baked into the number, and yet somehow, some way, it feels like you just can't go against the Ravens. I have no idea if John Harbaugh is aware of this streak. But in what we do, gentlemen, it actually is one of the more incredible streaks that you can really think of here, what the Ravens are doing in the preseason, dating back now 5+ seasons in preseason football. So it's something I don't really want a part of. I look at the Raiders, coming off the Hall of Fame win last week. It feels like an inflated price this week against Minnesota. But then again, you dig into the numbers, and actually teams that have done pretty well in these bounce back spots after covering in week 1 is with a double-digit win in week 1 of their preseason into week 2. So the numbers actually even back the Raiders this week. But it really is something because it's so hard to me to quantitatively look at it and go, well, this is the best of the number here. I'm going to stay away from the majority of preseasons. I did watch really for more of the season totals and how I think these teams might project a little bit after looking at some of the ones against some of the 2, i.e. the Giants game last night. Yeah. But really, to me, preseason football is a big stay away from me. I really want to try to make that money when I know that the coaches and the players are all in for the real stuff come week 1 of the regular season.
And by the way, you mentioned the Giants a lot, who beat the Patriots last night. That's another under-the-radar sort of run that Bill Belichick is on of losing in the preseason, and neither here nor there. You mentioned the Giants. Look, their win total is at 7. I think that's an incredibly, insanely high price, and I'm a Giants fan. I just don't have a ton of faith that they're going to turn this thing around. Now, that said, I think the big question is how much can Brian Daboll change this team, this offense? Can he make Daniel Jones any better? If he can, 7 may be attainable. But where do you sit on the Giants and their likelihood for their over win total or under and their price in the NFC East to win it at plus 800?
Mark, I'm right there with you. I keep looking at the numbers here, and I'm going, wow, that feels so inflated. Look, I'm excited for the front office of what the Giants did in the offseason, cleaning out the general manager, cleaning out the head coach, bringing in Brian Daboll. It feels like you're going to have some stability here with this first-year head coach coming over from the Buffalo Bills. But to me, the real question, it still does come down to Daniel Jones. And look, I don't put a lot of stock in what I see in the preseason. But if you did watch him in those first 2 drives last night, you get the field goal in the first one and the second one is a disaster. It doesn't look – it looks like it's too much to ask for 8 wins to get over that win total of 7 to cash that ticket. Really, your best hope to me – is a push. And why would I put money down on an overplay if the best that I realistically can look at is 7-10 with this football team when you look at it and try to go best case scenario? And you guys know how this works. To me, a lot of the totals, it's easier to hit unders. And I know it's not the sexy way to play. Who likes to play unders, right? You're rooting for the passage of time, essentially. But really, the unders are more valuable to me when you look at these elongated prop plays like an over-under for an entire season. So to me, I think realistically, it's a 5-6 win team. They're not invested, this coaching staff, with Daniel Jones next year. He's not under contract after this year. So they can really be gone with him with this front office and Brian Daboll to have nothing to do with the drafting of him back to the Dave Gettleman days there in New York. Look, I actually like Daniel Jones potentially in this offense if they can run him like a mini Josh Allen. The problem is he doesn't have the size that Josh Allen does to really make him that +1 in the backfield that the defense has to account for. So,
and Josh Allen doesn't trip over the 15-yard line, and Daniel Jones does. So there's that.
That's not
the turf
happening
monster
again.
doesn't seem to get Josh Allen as much as it gets Daniel Jones. He's just slight, guys. Yeah, right. I mean, I like the potential of Daniel Jones in kind of a mobile style offense like they ran at Buffalo, but it really is the trigger guy, and that's not Josh Allen that we're looking at with Daniel Jones. The confidence just doesn't seem to be there. You know the coaching staff is not invested in you past this year. He knows that, and the brain trust knows that. So while I like normally guys on prove-it years like Daniel Jones is on here, I just don't think it's going to work out in the end. It's a quarterback-rich draft next year coming out. I think the Giants are going to move on. I think that'll be apparent. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tyrod Taylor gets the bulk of the work as the season goes on for the G-Men. I'd have to play the under on that win total of 7.
Can you guys tell me
Giants? Healthy Tyrod Taylor might be better for the over 8 wins than
right. Jared, you're exactly right. That could be the better scenario cashing that ticket. But I think they're going to go with Daniel Jones at least for the beginning of the year until he proves once again that he can't be the guy. And then I wonder if it's too far down the bridge there for them to stretch that out to 8 wins. I just don't see it.
By the way, guys, I agree. Both of you guys, any just real quick, over under games Saquon Barkley plays this year. Like, that's the better
year for him, too.
He's a chandelier. You blow on him, and he gets hurt.
But, Mark, have you seen his quads? Everybody loves his quads. Can the guy play?
Listen, I know it's show. If there's anybody who knows about show muscles, it's me. Okay? That's all I have is show muscles. They're not meant to do anything. They're not meant to lift anything or run anywhere. They're just for show. That's great. Congratulations. But the guy's a chandelier. If he plays 9 games this year, I'd be shocked.
It's true, and we always say about what the best ability is availability. He has not been available for this football team at all. I always, covered the team in DC there for 2 decades, and they always say you can't make the club from the tub. He's always in the tub. He's got to be on the field.
Oh, that's a good one, Dave.
Yeah,
Dave, if I steal that,
stay healthy. Steal it.
If I steal that, I don't want your lawyers to be calling me for copyright infringement because I'm going to use that at some point on the air at some capacity. Okay, let's move on to Philly. And Philly is intriguing to me, Dave, because when they were making their big moves during the draft, and by all accounts, maybe other than the Jets, they had the best draft. Getting guys that they wanted, and then getting AJ Brown too. And I know he wasn't drafted, but the whole package of that month of the rebuild of the season was certainly favorable for Philly. I got in early on their win total at over 8.5. It's moved to 9.5 now, and I have a decision to make. And I'm curious. I want to get your thoughts on Philly as a whole, but I'm curious as a gambler too. You're holding an over 8.5 ticket like me. You have 2 options. You can come back under 8.5 on a big plus money price, guarantee profits right now, or you can come back under 9.5 and try to middle. I'm torn right now. I see value in both. What value do you see in that scenario? And then your overall thoughts on how the Eagles are going to be this year.
Well, props to you, Jared, because actually before the draft, right, you look at the pricing out there, certainly to win the NFC East, the Cowboys at that time were laying almost $1.30. The Eagles were over $2 to win this division. Those numbers are long gone. You got the best of the number at 8.5. Look, you know what we always say, if you can lock in that profit if you really want to play the long game, because you've already done the homework and you got the best of the number. And you could go for that middle there, which would be amazing. This was a 9-win football team a year ago. First-year head coach Nick Sirianni last year. They get to the playoffs, and it feels like everybody in Philly feels like, well, they got to take the next step of the evolution process this year and get to 10 and 11. I don't know if that's the case. I love this football team more in the pricing of the market before the draft than I do now. And obviously, there's a reason why those numbers changed, because I'm right there with you. I did think they had a really good draft. If you're not sold on Jalen Hurts, I do like Gardner Minshew as the backup too. So if he does struggle, this is another scenario where they're not really, again, the front office. They don't have to go long-term with Jalen Hurts. I actually am more up on Jalen Hurts than I am Daniel Jones, but that quarterback room is pretty solid overall. And the rest of the 53 is pretty darn good. They've really upgraded that roster from last year's team. So I do think that the over is in play for 9.5 if you really want to double down, but it's right in that spot. That 9.5 number is a good number out there for the Sharps, because I think it's going to be really close here either way. 8.5, you got the best of it. So I'd be tempted to try to play that middle of 9, because I think right now that's where I see this football team. I don't think it's an 11-12 win team like a lot of people are now prognosticating for the Eagles this year. I'm not that high on them to make that big a leap, because I do think that's incumbent upon Jalen Hurts. He's got the tools now to go down the field. Look, they can run the football. It's one of the best running football teams we saw last year. If they get away from that identity and really put too much of the pressure on Hurts, I think they could be fool's gold. I would still hope that they would run the football
right now. Under 9.5. What do you have to? You go under 9.5, or you go under 8.5, and you take the guaranteed profit. What would you do if you were?
I would play the under 9.5 with your over 8.5 and play for that middle, because I see 9 wins right there. I think that's a real realistic shot for them again this year to go 9-8.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm curious.
No,
Dave. I trust your opinion. So
yeah.
All right, let's
pivot to. I do like that team though this year.
Well, I mean, from my standpoint, the only team I would put money on in the NFC East is the Washington Commanders. And let me just give you 30 seconds on why. Hang on here. This is more about the price and the volatility and the variance than necessarily anything else. When you look objectively at the Commanders, this is not a bet on Carson Wentz, and that's where people are looking at this the wrong way. This was a team 2 years ago that won the division. Granted, they were a 500 team that won the division and went to the playoffs with some version of Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke. The reason why they were able to do that is because they had a top 5 defense in this league. Last year, their defense was disgusting. It was bad. They gave up 30 points a game. They had no pass rush. It all fell apart. Do you think that Ron Rivera, of all coaches, is going to have a bad defense 2 years in a row? I say no. If he gets the defense fixed, the quarterback play isn't the issue. Is Wentz better than Fitzpatrick and Heineke? Yes. Is he better than whatever they put out there? Yes. How much better? I don't really know that it matters, but it's probably enough to get them to 9 or 10 wins and to win this division if the volatility of Dallas and the volatility of Philadelphia all end up shaking out. And when I'm getting this much of a better price at plus 500, that's the only reason for me to bet on the Commanders. For me, it's the Commanders or nobody, because as you just mentioned, could the Eagles turn around and decide to try to make Jalen Hurts a passer and watch him throw picks and give away games? Absolutely. Could Dallas fall apart because Mike McCarthy seems to have forgotten how to coach in the last decade and continually screw things up? Dak can't stay healthy. Zeke doesn't have a running game. They have no other receivers outside of CeeDee Lamb, and their defense could fall apart. Is all that a possibility? Yes. Given all that volatility in those two teams, this is the best price for me to bet with the least volatility, because if Rivera fixes the defense, this team is going to be very tough to beat.
Mark, you're right about one thing, and that's the defense last year, which was awful for the majority of the year. They did get a lot better towards the end of the year. But let me just throw out a huge but here with Ron Rivera. This is the end of line for Ron in D.C. if it goes south. I mean, I know Daniel Snyder has got a lot of other things that he's trying to deal with here when you're meeting with Congress and all the right, the mess right now that is the Washington Commanders, or third year with a new name now for that team. The fan base isn't there. Look, I was there in DC for almost 2 decades. I've never seen the apathy for this football team like I see right now, and that does trickle down. And I think the players have felt that a little bit when they're not even going to camp. The fan base this year, it does. They do have to really lean on that defense. But here's the issue that I just saw last week. They fired Sam Mills III. He was the defensive line coach there. And the strength of that defense is supposed to be the defensive line. And I go, what's that all about? Deron Payne is back. Jonathan Allen's back. And they got in a high-profile fight in that disaster of a football game in primetime last year in Dallas. And those guys are back. And then you fire the D-line coach. And Jack Del Rio is still the defensive coordinator. And that stuff starts to matriculate into that locker room where they're going, what are we doing here? And it feels like it's split from afar. I'm not in that locker room like I used to be for all those years. But from the people that I know still back in D.C., it doesn't feel like things have meshed from the offseason. And now Carson Wentz, as you mentioned, walks in to try to take over that offense. If the defense can't lead with guys like Del Rio and Ron Rivera, that's their hallmark. That's what they hang their hat on every night when they go to work. That's what they're supposed to be, a defensive-first football team. And Chase Young is out for the beginning of this year as well. Man, I got a lot of questions about this football team. And so now you go to Carson Wentz, where Frank Reich said your services are no longer required in Indianapolis. And I was your guy in Philadelphia when you had the best run of your career, and we're going to send you packing. Man, there's a lot of flags there, Mark. So I wanted to get behind this football team as well. I just can't. From the outside looking in, from the periphery now, but the insiders that I still know inside that locker room every day, they're not painting a rosy picture for me. And I wanted to, because I'm with you on the defense on paper. But when I saw that Sam Mills firing this week, I went, what's going on there? It feels like we're starting the year and there's more chaos already before we've even played one real football game in DC.
Yeah, that's tough. Zeno, I don't know, bud. Listen, I like the value. And well, here's the one thing I'll say. That division's been really weird. And that's why when we get to our next team, the Dallas Cowboys, I have no feel. I have absolutely no feel for this Dallas Cowboys team. And I think the rest of this division is really tough to
in this division for 17 years. 17 years in a row.
I know. It's a tough division to cap. I think this and the AFC North are the two divisions that I have the toughest time handicapping who the best teams are every year, because it seems like they're so tough-nosed teams that it just there's a lot of opportunities for one team to have an above-average season, where I don't see that in other divisions where I'm more confident that other teams are going to be down. Whereas I don't know which team's going to be the down team in the NFC East this year. It could be the Giants. It should be the Giants, but it might not be. It could be Washington. It should be Washington, but Zeno makes interesting points. Let's move to Dallas, because they're obviously a team that a lot of people are going to be paying attention to. They always are. They have a lot of individual talent. What's the collective here, Dave? Are they a team that can win and be successful in the postseason? Because we have not seen that with this Cowboys team in my lifetime, basically, since like the 90s.
Jared, yeah, it's been a long time. Look, I lived those glory days in the 90s with Jimmy Johnson and young Jerry Jones, pre-facelifts. I mean, it feels like, it has literally been decades since the Cowboys have done anything in our lifetime here. And so those feels like just forgotten days, right? Jerry, I don't know if he's out of the way, because Stephen Jones really is running the day-to-day. I mean, anybody down in Dallas will tell you that. It really is Stephen. Now, Mike McCarthy, and Mark, I heard you make those comments about Mike. When the Packers won that one Super Bowl, by the way, with Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy was calling plays. And I think what's happened here is they fell in love with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. And I like Kellen Moore, but Mike McCarthy actually – if he could go in there and kind of like Jon Snow, Game of Thrones, who's going to lead who's going to lead this group here? It's got to be Mike McCarthy. I hate to say it. He's the guy that really should be calling plays. He's actually got a better track record of calling plays than Kellen Moore. It feels like he's been neutered, and nobody wants to let Mike McCarthy lead. If that's the case, get out of the way. Hire Sean Payton if that's what the Joneses really want to do here. And if they get off on a slow foot here, which is possible when you open up with the Buccaneers in week 1 and with the Bengals in week 2, I could see a scenario if this goes south quickly that they would make a change to try to save the season, because I don't think Jerry's going to be that patient. If it goes well at the beginning of this thing here and they get off to maybe an improbable 2-0 start with that, and they haven't got to the NFC East here, then I think it really could be a team that wins. Potentially, they won 12 games last year. I could see 11 wins for this football team hitting their over here. It's really about the leadership, because Kellen Moore, I think, got a little bit too cute in the last couple of years. Look, last year in the regular season, it did look good. And then we saw it all fall apart in the playoff game against San Francisco. It's not good enough to win this division for Jera and company. It has to be visions of grandeur. It's got to be winning 2 games in the postseason, potentially playing in a weak NFC overall to get to a title game. This is not the AFC where you have, 5, 6, 7 teams realistically that you could say play in the AFC title game. I think that number is down to about 4 in the NFC. They've got to be one of the best 4. And if they're not, there's going to be wholesale changes. Now, I mentioned the Eagles roster. Their 53, I think, is the best in the division. But I think the quarterback play holds them back potentially. Dak has got to be super Dak. He's got to be the best quarterback in this division. And if he is, which he is on paper, and he stays healthy, which has been a problem the last couple of years for 4 there with the Cowboys, as long as you don't see Cooper Rush and those guys here, I think the backups in New York and Philly are better than the backups in Dallas. It's going to be incumbent upon keeping Dak Prescott healthy. And really, gentlemen, I look at one guy as the pivotal point in the offense, and that's Tyron Smith. I mean, this is a guy that really could be a Hall of Famer at left tackle. But again, we talk about, making the club from the tub and availability being the best ability. He's got to be on the field. If he's on the field for 17 games, then Dak's going to be on the field for 17 games. And that should parlay the Cowboys to being the first team to repeat in almost 2 decades in the NFC East. Because I think as the season goes and Michael Gallup gets back and he becomes the A1 to CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz, we saw him emerge at the tight end position last year. If the offensive line can hold up, and look, if Tyron Smith and Zach Martin, those are 2 great offensive linemen when they're healthy. And I'd put those guys up there as cornerstones against any offensive line if you can have those 2 of 5. But if they're not around and they're going to the backups like they've gone to a lot in the last couple of years, then number 4 is going to be looking down instead of looking up at his targets. And that's always the telltale sign for any quarterback if the eyes go down and staying up.
Dave, there's one part that I think we're forgetting about Dallas because you focused on the offense so much. Look, from 1 to 53, they have the most talented roster in the NFC East. But what Dan Quinn did with that defense last year can't be underscored. Now, I don't know if there's some regression there. I'm kind of tired of hearing about Trevon Diggs and all his interceptions. He's kind of overrated from a cover standpoint, if you ask me. Like, interceptions aren't necessarily a product of you being a great cover corner. They're a product of a lot of different things, particularly quarterbacks making bad decisions, but different discussion. That said, Dan Quinn still has to have that defense play at that level because of all the questions on the offense, whether it's not having wide receivers, whether it's not having a running game, whether it's not having the best offensive line. The only thing that kept Dallas in games last year was the fact that their defense played out of their minds. Can their defense do that again?
The reason why I'm confident they can, Mark, and your point about the turnovers is spot on. You can't expect that from what they got last year. And normally when you get that many picks like Trevon Diggs did, guys are going after you, right? And so you're stepping up in certain situations, but you are getting burned in certain situations. On a coaching staff, I can live with that. I can live with Diggs. You know, they're going to take shots at him. That's great. And he's going to give up some plays, but he's going to make some plays too. This isn't Deion Sanders. This is not a lockdown corner where quarterbacks don't even look his way. And he literally took away a side. Exactly. Like that's not who Trevon Diggs is, right? So I don't think there's fool's gold there. But the reasons why I trust it, number one, you mentioned it's Dan Quinn. I mean, they brought him over from Atlanta, and the job he did, you know, with the Legion of Boom back in the day with Seattle when they were going to Super Bowls. A large part of that was Dan Quinn in the defense, right? When Atlanta got to a Super Bowl, a large part of that was Dan Quinn and the job that defense did until the second half against the Patriots. But let's not forget how close they were, and he did help them win a title in Seattle under Pete Carroll. So there's another ready-made head coach if things go south with the offense. I do trust that he's going to be able to keep this defense playing at a high level. The defensive line, losing Randy Gregory is big. It really is big, and that was a contract dispute that the Joneses screwed up, and it looked like he was going to be back in the fold, and now he's in Denver, and that defense is going to be much better for it. But he really did get back to the rotation a lot of the D-line, and those guys were fresh in fourth quarters, and they were beating guys up front without blitzing. And Micah Parsons is, you hate to put him so fast in the company of Aaron Donald for the best defensive player right now, because Aaron Donald is the gold standard right now when it comes to D linemen or just defensive players, period. But he's coming quickly, gentlemen. You're going to be looking at 11 here for the next 10 years and looking him at an Aaron Donald, a Lawrence Taylor back in the 80s, where he could play anywhere on the field, and he was just a matchup nightmare. That's how talented he is. I mean, the Joneses struck gold getting him out of Penn State last year, and he's getting better from what I'm hearing so far already in the offseason into this year. So he's such a force defensively that having him healthy, and that was not a problem, knock on wood, Cowboys fans last year. If he stays healthy for all 17 and Tank Lawrence there on that D-line, and Trayvon taking his shots there, they've got a big two, and Trayvon is at least a good cover corner, enough of a cover corner that he's going to make big plays for you. Man, as long as that core stays healthy and the linebackers are flying around behind him, behind 11, and whether he's got the hand in the ground or he's standing up, that defense they're going to be a big play defense. I mean, they made a lot of them last year. I can't count on the same number of turnovers they got, but I think you can know that they're going to be getting after the quarterback, and that quarterback's going to be throwing it up there quickly because of guys like Tank Lawrence and 11 back there with Micah Parsons. So I do trust Dan Quinn. I do trust that defense still on paper, even with the subtraction of Randy Gregory. They're elite that defense, they really do get after the passer, and that's something Cowboy fans have not seen in years past. They saw it last year. I think they're going to see more of it this year. It's a nightmare for NFC East quarterbacks.
He is Dave Ross of VSiN. Follow him on Twitter at DRossSports. You see it right there below. Thanks for the time, brother. Appreciate it. Great stuff, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Always appreciate the conversation, fellas. Can't wait for real football. Let's go.
All right, again, Dave Ross of VSiN. Great stuff there from Dave on the NFC East. We are going to move on to our plays of the day, but first, we have some PLL action to get to, Jared, as we got another round of Premier Lacrosse League coming up this weekend.
I don't see the read in the rundown, Justin.
Oh.
I think you might be in the box right now.
In the box.
Yeah.
That's a lacrosse.
So
for those who
it's
don't
the
know.
lacrosse box. I can't. There's nothing in there, so I can't give you anything on the PLL right now. I wish I could.
That's all right. Instead of PLL, let's go to Pickswise.com and check out our 3-star plays of the day. Jared, what is on the website for us?
That we do have. We
good.
have a play on the Dodgers and the Royals on the run line. We have a play on the Athletics and the Astros on the run line. Mark Lammy, Brian Prudy are your handicappers there. We also have some soccer, a little footy to get to. Arsenal, Leicester City tomorrow, and FC Cincinnati, Atlanta United tomorrow night. So get on to Pickswise.com. Check out those 3 stars.
All right, let's go to our plays of the day. Jared, by the way, is Vegas Jared, what's his record on plays of the day so far? We got a brand new fresh
Good
start.
question. Hold on. Let's look. I
Been
think
there
it's
for what?
yeah,
Four
it's 1
now,
and
so
it's 1 and 2. It's 1
Okay.
and 2.
All
But
right,
the
well,
one
much like-
was plus money, so I'm only down 0.9 units so far. I'll be honest, my plays of the day suck. I'm down a shit ton in the
I
year.
really
that
don't
we've
like
been
that
doing this
attitude.
show.
I'm not going to lie here.
I know,
would
but I'm
expect
just listen.
better
Transparency is important.
Vegas Jared at this point in time. I understand that. Well, I would like you to turn it around and get us kicked off with your
Let's do
play
it.
of the day.
Let's do NRFI action here. San Diego, Washington, plus 105 in this NRFI I got over at the Westgate. It's the return of Juan Soto. Hey, exciting. But I think that might be a distraction in the top of the first inning, right? And you get Corey Abbott making his 3rd start of the season for the Nats. 2-0 to the NRFI so far. So small of a sample size. Really tough to gauge anything there. Only 5 plate appearances against the current Padres lineup. And he 0 for 5 against them. So not a very good batting average, but again, a very small sample size. Bad ERA for Abbott this year, 5.6, but his expected ERA is 3.8. So maybe he's gotten a little bit unlucky. Meanwhile, on the other side, Mike Clevenger, 11-1 to the NRFI this season, 16-4 on the road since 2019. That's an 80% hit rate over the last 3 years on the road. Very impressive stuff for Clevenger. And these lineups are bad. That's why I think it adds value to this when you look at the lineup. San Diego is a bad scoring lineup on the road in the first inning this season at just 19%, scoreless in 7 straight. And the Nats, well below average at home, 26%, scoreless in 6 straight, and 21 of the last 25. Obviously, Juan Soto in the top of the first inning could wreck this. I'm sure he's going to be swinging for the fences, but I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing. Because usually when you swing for the fences, you come up empty. So I think the distraction, it could go either way with Soto. It could obviously motivate him, and he could really get a hit in that first inning and ruin this for us in the top of the first. But I think it's going to go the other way, and I'll take the coin flip odds at plus 105 that it's going to go in our favor. Nats, Padres, NRFI, my play of the day.
All right, for me, I'm going to stick with something I've been riding a little bit here, and that's team totals. And we're going to look at Philadelphia and the Mets, Jared. You're going to get Ranger Suarez going Philadelphia against Max Scherzer of the Mets. So naturally, I'm going to take the Phillies team total over. Now, last night, it was at 3 even at plus 108 at plus money. I still see it there at certain books. I have it at 2.5 today. Why? Because I don't want to tie, because I don't like ties on my plays of the day. So we'll take over 2.5 at minus 110. Now, you're saying, Zeno, how are you going to go up against Scherzer? He's 8-2. He's got a 1.98 ERA. He's got a 0.98 whip. Why would you bet against a pitcher like that? Well, Jared, in 3 starts against Philadelphia this year, and you look at all of the splits for Max Scherzer, highest ERA versus any team this year, Phillies, 4.24. Most hits allowed versus any team this year, 20, Philadelphia Phillies. Most runs allowed by any team this year, Phillies at 8. Most home runs allowed, Phillies, 4. Second highest opponent batting average against, Phillies, 299. And oh, by the way, you can say, he's made one more start against Philadelphia than he has against any other team. That's fine. You could take either of his 3 starts, 2 out of 3 of them, and he still has the highest number in all of those categories, or the second highest number in all of those categories. The Phillies seem to have Scherzer's number. All I got to do is get to 3. If they get in the bullpen, I'll feel okay with this. Either Scherzer's going to continue this trend and be bad against them and struggle against them, or he's going to come out today, throw a one-hitter with 17 strikeouts. But one way or another here, I like the money that I'm getting and the price that I'm paying for over 2.5 runs. So give me the Phillies over 2.5 for my play of the day. All right. That felt good, Jared. That felt really good. Now we have
get it out, Mark. Get it out.
Ready to go, Jared. So I will flip it over to you for Premier Lacrosse League.
We do. And now I listen. This is it's live TV. Things happen. 2 games today on the plus. Atlas, Whip Snakes, 8 o'clock Eastern. Water Dogs, Woods, 10:30 Eastern. Then 2 more games tomorrow, 12 o'clock, 2:30 Eastern, also on the plus. Check out picks. I saw them on the site this morning on Pickswise.com. If you want lax, we've got you covered. Check it out, PLL.
All right, that'll do it for us today on Let's Bet It Again. Subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Let us know your comments with picture ons and questions as well. Make sure you download the Pickswise app, available on Apple Store and Google Play. For Jared Smith, I'm Mark Zinno. You have a wonderful Friday. Back tomorrow. Go get it. Go bet it. Have a great day.